Sarah is sitting at the piano, remembering the time she met someone that she belonged to, and how the purpose of her life presented itself to her one night. We go back in time to 1984. One man and an African-American child are standing outside a building in which a charity event is being held. A blonde woman named Charlie enters the building in a hurry. Sarah is inside too with her new husband. Everybody's having a great time. Next, Sarah sees her, waving at her rapidly, and she quickly goes to see her sister. They hug each other, and Sarah introduces her to her husband, Henry, a man who surely is a little crazy since he fell in love with Sarah. Charlie is introduced to Henry's family too. They are very distinguished people, the main people at this event that is held to raise money for the kids in Africa. A stand-up comedian on the stage is doing his piece when the sisters go to the bathroom. They have a great relationship. After talking about the news in their lives, they get back to work. A woman enters the stage and calls for Henry to make an announcement. Henry rises and thanks his father, Lawrence, for his work as chairman of Aid Relief International. However, his speech, which has a slight hint of hypocrisy, is cut short. A man standing outside the building enters the room blatantly with the kid named Jojo, rushes towards Sarah, and takes a bottle of champagne. With an orchestra of photographers following him, he ascends the stage and reveals to everyone that this event is full of terrible hypocrisy. He shows Jojo to everybody, withered and weak from starvation, to shame the people having a great time during this event that costs as much as 1,000 meals for this kid. We understand that he's a doctor working in Africa with his camp of 2,000 kids. He calls out Lawrence and lets everybody know that the latter cut his funding because of political reasons. Nick thinks, of course, that this scene must make most people feel guilty. However, a banana appears on the floor in front of him, and a burst of sudden laughter fills the room. Nick doesn't plan to lose the fight, though. He gives the banana to a kid, emphasizing that it has more calories than he takes in a day. He even asks the kid to imitate a monkey, which he does. This horrible scene makes Sarah cry, and the room gets quiet in an instant. Finally, a group of people strangle him and kick him out. Sarah leaves the event extremely troubled. From her car, she sees Jojo in a police van. We follow them to the Immigration Service Center, where Jojo manages to hide from the police and get free. Meanwhile, Nick gets out of the police station too. As he lights his cigarette, a man named Steiger approaches him, supposedly from the CIA, who saw his performance at the ball and offers him help. This man needs to get into Ethiopia in exchange though. And here Nick shows a great deal of character by declining this offer. Next, it's morning, and Sarah's sister is leaving, joking about her sister's new English environment, and offering her American aid of macaroni and cheese at any time. As she leaves the house, a deeply disturbing news story attracts Sarah's attention. The man on TV is saying that Jojo's dead from hypothermia, and this terrible news swallows her whole. In the following scene, she is in a museum. The guide is speaking in the most refined English about some abstract paintings, adding to Sarah's bitterness towards the culture that stays ignorant of the horribleness around the world. That day, at home, Sarah is telling Henry about her new idea. She wants to raise funds, get supplies, medicine, and food, and go to Ethiopia to help. Henry denies it at first, saying that there is no need for Sarah to go. Her money is enough. It's a little childish of Sarah to go there. However, Sarah is irritated by his attitude and says that growing up is not what she wants. Eventually, she convinces him to raise funds. And so, Sarah travels to the barren lands of Ethiopia, bringing food, supplies, and medicine with 3 trucks through the orange and uncultivated terrain. A woman named Chile tells her about the disease, hunger, and thirst that have their claws embedded deeply in this land. They are getting to know each other better when Sarah sees a picture outside that is so dreadful that she stops the truck immediately and gets off as quickly as possible. A little kid on the verge of dying from starvation is being approached by a vulture twice his size, waiting for his death to enjoy his dinner. Sarah saves him and immediately sees a woman, lying in the dirt, wounded and about to die, chanting the name of the kid. The people around are about to raid the truck, and they must leave. Sarah, despite the driver's resistance, manages to save both of them. They then arrive on the outskirts of the camp, a desolate wasteland in the middle of the land forgotten by God. A few cars arrive, filled with African soldiers, shooting their weapons in the air, warning people not to get in the way. They come down, quickly approach the truck full of beans, and claim it. Soon, there's a big confrontation over the food. Sarah gets to the truck to see the kid when another car arrives at the camp. Nick comes outside and approaches the leader of the soldiers. They talk and negotiate. The leader tries to present his powers. However, Nick doesn't back down either. He is responsible for this camp's well-being. So Nick offers them alcohol, and eventually, the soldiers get 8 bags of beans. After the problem is solved, Nick quickly leaves this place, welcoming Sarah to the famine relief. In the following scene, inside the camp, Sarah shows the baby to the doctor, telling him that his mother is wounded too. Nick quickly checks both of them and briskly decides that there's no chance of their survival. This seemingly cold-hearted decision upsets Sarah. However, Nick tells him that there is no place for white girl heroism here, that he has 3,000 more people to save and take care of today. This scene of a woman with a starving kid in her hands is no more than a horrible act of senselessness. However, Sarah is not a mere white girl. She tells Nick how she found this kid and asks him once more to take a look at them, this time with more power in her words and tears in her eyes. Nick agrees, and his assistant, Kat, takes the baby. Elliot, the chief administrator, introduces himself to her in the next scene. He tells Sarah, who is standing outside the food distribution center, that the food she brought will only last 3 days. This is unexpected for Sarah, but Elliot, seeing her reaction, says that they usually find a way. Sarah enters the lazaret, slowly making her way amongst the weak and forsaken people. Her white dress shines like hope. She approaches the door in which surgery is being made. She enters the surgery room and is immediately staggered by what she sees. Nick is conducting the surgery on a woman she saved without anesthesia. Nick seems to be used to such operations. Seeing that Sarah is not, he starts making cynical remarks, emphasizing her soft background. Over the sound of flies buzzing everywhere, they exchange a few blows. Nick with his irony and cold cynicism, and Sarah with her warm and caring heart. The woman is saying something repeatedly, but Nick doesn't seem to care at all. As they give the woman soda, which is all that matters to her, Sarah realizes that she's in great pain and tells him to do something about it. However, this is Africa, and it's not possible. Sarah, however, continues to push Nick, and eventually, they ask the woman, and her words end the confrontation. She says that her pain comes from hunger, but death is hungrier, and she thanks Nick, calling him by his new name, Matinee, he who steals from death. Life goes on in the camp. In the following scene, Sarah is still in the lazaret, trying to cure the baby. Nick comes up to her and tells her that only goodwill is not enough to help him. Sarah is fed up with this attitude. Irritated, she tells him that she already understood that he doesn't want her here. This affects Nick. He abruptly changes and tells her what she needs to do in more mechanical terms before leaving. People are digging dozens of graves in the gray evening. Hopeless people know that this ritual is normalized here in camp. At night, everyone in charge gathers around a campfire to discuss their plans. Sarah is there too. The number of deaths is rising, and water is running out. However, the government is coming tomorrow. After laying out all the problems and possible solutions, Nick introduces his plan to them, organizes the crew, and the meeting is called off. Before they leave, he tells Sarah that the mother of the boy is dead, and this news darkens the night. Elliot and Nick are looking down on the camp from above in the next scene. Elliot says that they have 2 weeks at most left and all hope is gone. No organization is ready to aid them, and after Nick suggests they contact Steiger, a political disagreement erupts between them. However, this disagreement is cut short in an instant by an unusual sound coming from the camp. They listen to it closely. After a while, Elliot says that it's Schumann. We follow the sound and find Sarah sitting by the piano, playing Schumann in an empty hall. Nick gets down, eavesdropping and looking from a distance, looking as if she were a distant vision sent from the stars to sow hope in this forsaken land. He's mesmerized, and from his expression, we understand that he's not the cold-hearted and cynical man he's trying to present himself as. He has a soft spot, and this image of a heartless man is a mere defense mechanism. Next, he visits Sarah in her tent and recites a poem by Schumann. This small gesture creates a delicate bond between them. They joke about a German wordplay. Nick is so drawn into her that he forgets his initial purpose, the kid. Sarah tells him that the method he suggested didn't work. And this time, to Sarah's surprise, Nick says that there's still a chance of his survival, putting hope in her heart and making her feel that her determination is not in vain. And so, Sarah too seems to understand that this man's heart is, in truth, rich and warm. Late at night, Sarah continues to care for the baby, and when the morning comes, Chile, the African woman, calls Sarah to show her something. They enter the lazaret and see the kid getting better. Nick, who's inspecting him, turns around and tells Sarah that one life is saved. However, this moment of enormous happiness is disturbed by Elliot, who enters the building and says that the governor is here. In the following scene, they have a meeting with him. Elliot is stating that they need a food supply by the end of the week, or this starvation issue will raise another security issue for his staff. They have a small disagreement about this while Chile and one man are ruining the governor's car. Ningpopo, the government is ready to contact WFB for some emergency corn. Elliot is happy with it. However, Nick thinks that his political duality is long overdue. He says that WFB owes them 3 months of corn anyway. This creates a heated argument about the procedures that have to be done to supply this camp, and eventually, Ningpopo leaves, his car ruined and carried by tugboat, and the piece they acquired from it is used for their wellhead. Now they have to contact Steiger for sure. Next, it's night, and Sarah enters Nick's tent. It's empty for now, and she approaches his desk when he arrives. Sarah quickly tells him that she's dropping her traveler's check since she leaves tomorrow. Nick approaches, telling her that Elliot might shut him down. Sarah knows that it's their last conversation, so she tries to be nice, telling him that she admires what he does. This attempt to warm the conversation is useless with Nick, who tries to shut down his emotions. Sarah is fed up with this habit of his and calls him out, emphasizing that he never says her name. However, Nick has a reason for this. In this place of true suffering, there is no way of numbing it. These people have no shield against it and are courageously fighting it. He claims that Jojo, the kid who died in London, was a good friend he saved and that he must have remembered him by the end of time. All because he knew his name and was close to him. Now, he tries to run away from bonds like this, from friendships and love, because those bonds are constantly being broken here, in this land of sorrow, and he too has no shield to protect himself from it. So he shares his heartache with Sarah, which makes her tear up, and now she's looking at him with even more appreciation and compassion. In the morning, Elliot and Sarah have a heartwarming goodbye. Elliot gives her their contact information and asks if she wants to say farewell to Nick. Sarah decides that it's not necessary. She has an unusual feeling that they will meet again. In the following scene, Sarah is in London. She struggles to put pajamas on Jimmy, her son, when Henry walks in. They send Jimmy to his room and discuss it tomorrow. Henry is desperate for work and wants to be in the city to compete with other candidates, while Sarah needs to be in the office all day. There's no one to take Jimmy to school. They have a disagreement about this, and finally, Henry wants her attitude to change. He pitifully tells Sarah that he's struggling and they should make each other feel worse. This seizes the argument quickly, and after that, Henry tries to assure her, saying that he has a good chance to get a job with one guy. He tries to end the day on a soft note by embracing her, but Sarah tells him that Jimmy's waiting, sending him to his room. Next, Sarah is in the office, working while looking at the TV, where her sister is covering the major news. A phone call comes once more, and to Sarah's surprise, it's Elliot, who's in London right now. She's genuinely happy to hear his voice and quickly arranges a meeting with him. Before going into the park to meet Elliot, Sarah drops by her house, walks in, expecting no one, and sees Henry with a woman named B, who used to work with his dad. Sarah is devastated by this, asking about the job interviews rhetorically, knowing that he is cheating. Sarah is sitting, still like a statue in the following scene, thinking about what she just saw when Elliot arrives. Seeing a good friend is a relief for Sarah. They sit down on a bench and start talking. Elliot and his crew are in Cambodia now. After some small talk, Sarah notices that Elliot is struggling to tell her the real reason why he called. Eventually, he said that they need a stamp from the United Nations, where Sarah works since there's corruption and civil war in Cambodia. Sarah, of course, says yes and is even ready to go there herself. Elliot tries to stop her since Cambodia is different and more dangerous, but to no avail. She needs to get out of the city, especially after Henry's behavior. Flashing through time, we are in Cambodia. The workers are demanding more money for loading a cargo full of medicine, but Sarah is unwaveringly declining them. Meanwhile, Nick is in Cambodia too. He enters the bar and meets with Steiger, who's working for Khmer Rouge, the head of the communist coalition that's fighting against the government. Nick asks him impatiently where the boxes are, but Steiger seems to not care at all. He says that he has a lot on his plate now, and saving lives is not a priority at all. Nick is fed up with this conversation already and tells him to just give him some money for some kernel. Steiger does so and mentions that involving Sarah in this situation is very clever on his part. This enraged Nick. He tries to threaten Steiger but realizes that, since he provides the money, nothing can be done with him. Sarah and Nick meet again by the river, load the ship with medicine, and travel by river, which is a safer way to travel here. The tone of their conversation shifts from amusing to serious throughout. Nick definitely can make her laugh, however, this land is full of Nick tells her that they are going to Palin, the place that Rouge uses as a hideout, a place of landmines and violence. They even raid and steal medicine from their organization. They arrive at the military checkpoint at last, and now, to move forward, Nick has to give money to Colonel Tao. He gets out of the car and approaches Tao, giving him money, which he promptly receives. However, to Nick's Tao orders his soldiers to check the boxes. At first, they find nothing, but when Sarah walks in to threaten Tao with an investigation if anything happens to the medicine, the soldiers find guns, a box full of military equipment, and some intelligence files. Tao gets furious and beats Nick, then he takes his gun, and just when he's about to shoot, Sarah gets in front of him, kicking Nick repeatedly. Enraged and disappointed, she spits on him. The colonel then approaches him and pulls out his gun. Sarah closes her eyes, knowing there's nothing she can do. Nick closes his eyes as well, but Tao changes his mind, spits on him as well, and then turns back to his soldiers, laughing as if all of this is amusing. Next, they continue the road without any military equipment for Khmer Rouge, paying the fee for their medical work in Palin. Nick stops the truck and gets out to smoke. Sarah comes up to her too, and they have a heated argument about the morality of this all. After he's pushed to the corner by Sarah, Nick admits that he knew about the guns but not about anything else. This further angers Sarah, but Nick explains that here, you have to transport guns to help people. Sarah doesn't back down though. Transporting guns is an absolute evil for her, but Nick, who's also very upset, ends the argument by saying that the situation here is much more complex. Sarah should either propose other solutions or stop indicating the moral problems. In the following scene, they arrive at the camp. Sarah meets Elliot and quickly tells him not to compromise another organization for him ever again. Elliot knows that he's not right in this, and he approaches Nick, asking what happened. After he hears everything, he gets anxious and says that they must leave immediately, since Rouge is going to come for them if they don't give him guns. However, Nick is here to help people, and he's not going before tomorrow. They go to the lazaret and start the treatments when a small group of soldiers arrive. Their furious commander calls them thieves, he needs the file, and he demands that they make amends by going to Palin. This means death, so Nick decides to fight back, telling him that Sarah here is from the United Nations, which is important for Anka, and if something happens to her or any of the staff, the United Nations will crucify him. This changes the situation a little. Now the commander wants only one of them to die, either Nick or Elliot. After that, by his order, a soldier takes a small baby from the crowd, flies over everyone's heads. The baby's mother frees herself from soldiers and runs towards the baby, but is shot in the chest immediately by the commander, who now has his gun pointed at Nick, saying that they only serve Anka and that life means nothing to them. All of a sudden, Kat screams out that he's just a baby. The commander approaches her and cuts her face with a knife. After this, everything goes upside down. Nick gets a hold of the commander and grapples him, putting a knife on his neck. The soldiers put their weapons down. They kill the soldiers and save themselves, but find Elliot, still and lifeless. Still in shock, they migrate the people west, over the Thai border, and they arrive in another camp where it's safe. At night, Nick is thinking about what happened. Sarah walks in, knowing what troubles him so much, and tries to comfort him, but Nick knows that it's his fault. Elliot lived to help people and, in the end, died for that cause. Sarah knows this and manages to calm him down, adding that he should be proud of Elliot. Nick is proud of him, however, he must continue his work, and without Elliot, it's almost impossible. Sarah is worried about him, scared to lose him since he symbolizes something greater in her eyes. She tells him that for 4 years she couldn't sleep, thinking about whether he was alive or not. This plucks a deeply delicate string in Nick's soul, and he suddenly kisses Sarah. This kind of connection is what both of them need. They spend the night together, embracing these moments. In the following scene, they are lying on the bed, talking about their lives back in peaceful countries. Sarah tells him about her marriage and explains to him that she's with Henry only for the kid. After a few hours, Nick comes out of the bathroom and says that he must leave for New York tomorrow. He knows that this should be the last time they talk. The people who are important for Nick either die or get into trouble, and this fact is killing him. However, he must take steps back to get away from Sarah. He loves her too much to let her near himself. Sarah is desperate to hear this, tearing up and trying to argue, but she knows deep down that he's right. Sarah belongs to her family, and they must separate. In 1995, back in London, it's Sarah's birthday. The whole family is gathered in their home. Everything's lovely, her new daughter Anna is playing the piano, while Jimmy carries the cake. However, before she blows up the candles, Anna tells her to make a wish, and this reminds her of what she needs and lacks. In the following scene, she makes a speech as the new spokesperson for UNHCR. As she ascends the stage, her sister walks into the room, late as usual. Her speech is normal at first, however, this changes dramatically when she says that small non-governmental groups, such as Elliot's organization, are at the forefront of saving lives. When she is done with this sentence, a young man walks in the hall, taking rapid steps, and this picture promptly enlivens the memory of Nick bursting inside a building years ago. Sarah's words freeze in her mouth, and she leaves the stage. In the following scene, she's sitting on a bench in a park. Her sister sits beside her. After discussing what just happened, Sarah tells her about the letter she received from Nick. Nick, according to her observations, is in trouble in Chechnya, where he runs some sort of camp. Charlie knows that it's a horrible place, but Sarah doesn't back down. She asks Charlie to find out where Nick is since she's a journalist and has some contact there. There's no point in arguing, and after some consideration, Charlie agrees. To her delight, Charlie gets the information and sends her a fax after a few days in her office. That night, Sarah kisses her sleeping kids goodbye, goes downstairs, and puts a letter on the table. She's about to leave, but suddenly, Henry turns on the light. He's confused and upset that this is the way she's leaving. However, Sarah assures him that this is the easiest way to go and that she'll be back by Friday. Everything that he needs to know is in the letter. And so, Sarah is now in Chechnya, a place so cold and far more dangerous. She's in a car, driving through the streets of a ruined city full of snow, filthy people, and military cars. A sniper starts shooting, but they manage to arrive at their destination unharmed. In the following scene, she's inside a building, watching a tape. Her sister is by her side. On the screen, Nick is supposedly in his camp, saying that nothing has changed. Every country that he's been in sinks in horror, while the Western leaders stay silent. However, his speech is cut short by gunfire. They are attacked. Nick tries to find a cover, and the tape ends. Nick might be dead. Charlie tells her that he's disappeared, and Bob Strauss, who's with the ICRC here, tells her that Nick's whereabouts are unknown. They have no idea whom he angered. So Bob tells Sarah that she should stay in the hotel for a couple of days, but that's not going to happen. Sarah leaves the building, and Charlie follows her, assuring her that she's not safe here. However, safety has no meaning to her anymore. Even though people usually don't come around after disappearing here, she stays until she finds him. Next, there's a knock on her door. A man is standing there. He introduces himself as Steiger, a friend of Nick, and she lets him inside. Throughout the small conversation in which Steiger explained to her what his job is, Sarah eventually realizes that he is no mere journalist or relief worker here. He is much more dangerous. Steiger knows where Nick is, but he is unwilling to give up his life for him. Sarah asks about the reason for his visit, and he says that Sarah seems willing to put her life in danger. It seems like he has a friend, a local, who knows the road to the mountains, where Nick is being held right now. He'll take her, but after that, he's a mere spectator. And so, after this strange meeting, Sarah finds herself in a car, rushing through the snowy terrain. At some point, she leaves Steiger's friend behind and follows a group of Russians into the wilderness. Eventually, she gets to a camp. A man sitting by the campfire stands up. He seems like the main man here. Sarah tells him that she's looking for Nick and gives him money. The man guides her further into the wilderness to the small shack and tells her that she has 5 minutes. She finds Nick lying on the floor, almost frozen, on the verge of death, and tries to wake him up. Suddenly something explodes outside, and in a blink of an eye, the whole camp is sunken in chaos. They have the chance to run away, but Nick is too weak to stand up. It seems like there's nothing that will blow life into him. However, Sarah suddenly reminds him of the letter she sent, telling him that they have a daughter together, and that he's a father. This new information enlivens him, and he miraculously stands up. They have to walk 3 miles into the snow to get to the Red Cross camp. They get out unharmed, they struggle through difficult weather and terrain, and eventually, they see the camp in the distance in front of them. However, to their behind them, 2 cars arrive on the horizon. The commander walks out and gets a sniper. Nick now knows that they won't kill him, so he tells her quickly and anxiously to run away because they'll kill her for sure. Sarah surrenders and runs away, while behind him, Nick is shot twice in the arm. Sarah can't take this any longer. She can't run away while he's being taken hostage, so she turns around to save him. But a sudden click beneath her feet petrifies her. This is a sound of It's a landmine. Nick sees her, dumbfounded and still, shouting at her to run away, while she shouts back at him to stay, but to no avail, so Sarah closes her eyes, makes a decision, and steps away. The explosion throws Nick back, and when he realizes what just happened, he puts his head on the snow, overwhelmed by shock and awaiting death, but instead of death, comes a Red Cross and saves him. In the last scene, he's in a car, reading the letter that Sarah wrote, explaining to him that despite their constant separations, they never truly were apart. He is driven to Sarah's house, where he gets out of the car, approaches the house, and sees Anna, their daughter, the product of their love.